At number 4, we're diving into a video that was surprising to me to make it into the top 5. This is a video about how kids perceive time. Have you ever told a child to wait just 5 minutes and it feels like an eternity to them? There's actually a scientific reason behind that. Let's take a look at this together. That's why we use timers with little kids. Because if we say 5 minutes to a little kid, we could literally wait a year and tell them 5 minutes has passed and they'd be like, oh, great, so glad. Or you could wait 2 seconds and tell them 5 minutes has passed and they would say, oh man, 5 minutes, that's pretty quick. And they move right on. They just don't get it. Planning ahead is not something that little kids are good at because that prefrontal cortex is not accessed. The concept of time is different for kids because the part of the brain that helps us understand time, whether it's just how long time is or how we need to plan ahead for something or how we need to think about things for the future, that part of the brain is right behind the forehead. It's called the prefrontal cortex, and that part of the brain is still developing. There are different lobes in the brain, there's different pieces in the brain, and that part is called, like I said, the prefrontal cortex. And that part of the brain isn't fully connected until age 12. That doesn't mean that there's no access to that part of the brain. It doesn't mean that kids can't use their prefrontal cortex at all. It just means there's not a strong connection until age 12. There's not a full strong connection until at least age 25. That part of the brain that helps us understand how long 30 seconds is, how long 1 minute is, how long 5 minutes is, that is that part of the brain. And so for children, what is really helpful is helping them develop that prefrontal cortex, helping them develop that concept of time. And the way that you can do that most easily with a young child is to use what are called visual timers or countdowns. And when you are using those visual timers or countdowns, to follow through on the amount of time. So if you say, hey, we're going to go in 5 minutes, or hey, you have 5 minutes left on your video game, that doesn't mean come back in 1 minute and tell them that 5 minutes has passed. That throws off that development of that understanding time. Or if you tell them 5 minutes, it doesn't mean come back in 20 minutes and say, oh, it's been 5 minutes. You can come back and say it's been 20 minutes, but try to keep it as close as you can, and that helps them develop that planning ahead skill. That video came from a training I do about working with young children. In my therapy practice, I specialize in children, especially elementary age and younger, those with what's called developmental trauma. So if they experience trauma during the first 3 years of their life. And I also specialize in working with children with autism spectrum disorder. That training talks about how to work with those young children whose prefrontal cortexes haven't yet come online. A lot of times, as adults, we look at children, especially young children, and we think of them as just little adults or miniature adults. And that is not what they are at all. There are so many things that make them brilliant and amazing, and just they see the world in beautiful, incredible ways. But there are also some things about young children that can be very frustrating, and that's why I designed that training to help people understand working with young children. One of the things that can be so frustrating is when you tell them, hey, we're about to leave in 5 minutes. It seems like in 5 minutes, they have not even begun to start. And again, that's because of that prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is also responsible for, like I said, time management. It's responsible for being able to think ahead or plan ahead and think, hey, if I do this, this might happen. So a lot of times when you ask kids, why did you do that? They say the 4-letter word I-O-N-O. It's I don't know. That's what they say because their brain didn't think about why am I doing this? Their brain just thought, I feel like doing this. It's also involved in impulse control, so not just thinking and then doing. The prefrontal cortex helps them with that. It helps them understand language and nuances in language. And if you think about the things that can be a lot of times very frustrating for working with or having younger children, it's those things. Time management, not understanding what you really mean when you say different things, not thinking ahead, but just reacting. All of those things can be frustrating. And I want you to breathe easy if you are frustrated with a young child about those things, because their brain hasn't picked up the part of the brain that helps them do all of those things. And as a matter of fact, even if you're dealing with a teenager, know that they're very new at having that full connection to the prefrontal cortex. If you are dealing with someone who is under the age of 25, there is not a strong, full connection to that prefrontal cortex. So breathe easy and know that they've got time to grow, they've got room to develop, and it may not be that they have some disorder that's throwing off their time management or some disorder that's throwing off their impulse control. It's just that the prefrontal cortex isn't fully connected just yet. Let me know in the comments, what's the longest your child has ever waited for something, and how did they handle it?